Hello, everyone. Charles Coleman here, presenting to you two of the greatest recordings ever. Of course, this is a variation on the genre that Dave Hurwitz created on his Ultimate Guide to Classical Music channel, and I've decided to choose two recordings concerning the same piece, that being Edvard Grieg's Peer Gynt, one of the most celebrated works in the classical repertoire. And granted, although this is an excellent piece by Grieg, only two sections of this entire work became the so-called hits. One being "In the Hall of the Mountain King," do 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 do, and later on "Morning Mood." Do 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 yeah do 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 yeah da da yeah da yeah yeah and so on. But there's a lot of other great music in this amazing work, which Grieg originally wrote as incidental music for the play Peer Gynt, created by Henrik Ibsen. And apparently Grieg initially had a hard time doing this because Grieg had to write about an hour and a half of music for this play. And of course, Grieg is best known for his short works. Well, I mean, in terms of his piano works, his songs, he was much more used to doing that. I would say about 90% of Edvard Grieg's output was more associated with short pieces, but Peer Gynt is an exception, and also his piano concerto. Although Peer Gynt is basically a bunch of short pieces put together into an hour and a half score for the play that Ibsen wrote. Later on, Grieg took various portions of this music from Peer Gynt and made them into two different suites, which have been regularly recorded. But in later years, people preferred to not just play the suites, but rather a lot of the incidental music as well, if not the whole thing. Peer Gynt is the story of this, I don't want to call him a playboy, but kind of a guy that is not thinking about responsibilities when things happen. He escapes a marriage, he leaves the country and has all these crazy adventures. The story itself is a kind of, I don't want to say esoteric, but multi-detailed, even though there's a general story overall about him being this kind of a selfish playboy type, if you want to call it that. But then ultimately he comes back home to Norway to greet the woman Solveig, who has loved him all this time, and the play ends on a very beautiful and touching note. I remember when I used to work at WNYC, the radio station here in New York, I used to host the overnight shift, in which I got to play, even though I knew the two hit tunes from Peer Gynt, I once had to play a recording, I think it was the Jeffrey Tate recording of this, and the piece ends with this Solveig's lullaby, in which Peer Gynt kind of realizes how selfish he's been all this time, and he kind of cries in her arms as she sings this lullaby to him. And I remember I had to go back on the air telling everyone what the recording was and what the piece was, and I was already in tears because I had not heard that section before and then when I went on air, I was like a dripping pool of sorrow. But anyway, I got through it somehow, and since that time, this became one of my favorite pieces of all time to listen to. There have been many recordings of this. Jeffrey Tate, I just mentioned. Sir Neville Marriner did it. Von Karajan recorded the two suites twice. I think his earlier recording of it is better. But I have two favorite recordings. Here is one of them. Ole Kristian Ruud and the Bergen Philharmonic Orchestra on the BIS record label. First of all, this is kind of cool that this is recorded by the orchestra of Edvard Grieg's not only home country but hometown. Edvard Grieg was from the city of Bergen. In this recording, they do all of the music. Along with the play, kind of an adaptation of the original play by Ibsen. It's in Norwegian, but it has a libretto where you can see the translation and follow along. It is a wonderful recording. Very well recorded, very warm sound, and just precise playing from the Bergen Philharmonic. Wonderful recording with wonderful performances by Håkan Hagagard as Peer Gynt and Marita Solberg as Solveig, and wonderful other performances. Anyway, I love this recording. It's the entire music, which means it takes 2 CDs to do it. But it has the play, and if you want to get, I think there have been 1 or 2 other recordings of the entire score with the play, but this is the best. Sonically, performance-wise, really tight playing by the Bergen Orchestra, and Kristian Ruud delivers wonderfully. I love this recording. But if you want a recording that you can get on 1 CD, and not maybe you want more than just the 2 suites, but you don't necessarily need the full 90-minute score, this is the recording for you. Paavo Järvi leading the Estonian National Symphony Orchestra on the Virgin Classics record label. It has, of course, all the music from the 2 suites and additional music from the original score. And this was recorded at the Estonia Concert Hall in Tallinn, Estonia, where I've been. The sound there is magnificent. Nice, bright sound, kind of like any of the chapels at St. John the Divine here in New York, but except much bigger and very bright sounding. And sure enough, on the recording, they utilize that. Whereas this one is equally as good, but has a much warmer sound. This has a much brighter sound. This is my major go-to. If I ever created a funeral playlist, one of the pieces that I would want played is Paavo's rendition of the Solveig's Lullaby that ends Peer Gynt. In the Solveig's Lullaby, Camilla Tillig is wonderful. To me, it is the best rendition of the Solveig's Lullaby that ends this work. Gets me into a pool of tears, as I did when I first played this when I worked at WNYC. And this piece is no slouch either. Marita Solberg does a lovely performance, as does the Bergen Symphony Orchestra. Highly recommended. I love these both. If you want a shorter version, equally as great, this is the one for that. If you want the full version with the play, this is the one, no question. And they both came out the same year, 2005. I don't know whether that was a coincidence or what, but in my opinion, these 2 recordings are the ones to get. Blah, blah, blah. You know what I'm talking about. As you can tell, I like these 2, and I urge you to check it out. Until next time.